Welcome back to the Blender 3 Docwalk. This document is on the 3D cursor, so let's jump right in. Alright, so the 3D cursor is simply a point in space. You can see it right here, and we can move it around, change its position, and use it for a variety of things. The 3D cursor is that which dictates where a new object is added to in your 3D space, in your scene. So if I remember, the shortcut Shift Spacebar brings up your tool selection option pop-up here, and you can see 3D cursor is the spacebar. So you just hit Shift Spacebar to bring this up, and then tap Spacebar again to activate your 3D cursor. Then I can simply click wherever I want it to be, and at that point I can Shift A to bring up my Add dialog and just choose whatever I want to add to that point. Now we're going to go into quad view, which we just barely talked about, because okay, actually let's jump back really quick. When you are attempting to set your 3D cursor, often it doesn't get set exactly where you think it's getting set. So if I click there, right, you would think that's back at the origin of the scene, but if we rotate, you'll see that it's been affixed to the face of that cube, and it's not fully aligned with how you typically would imagine its axes be aligned to the scene. So the way we can handle that is you can either open another window, or as I just did, bring up the quad view, and as I click around, okay, you'll notice that it's moving in other you'll see it as it's moving in the other spaces. So in our front and right view, it's simply moving back and forth as I'm going in a circle here. But if I say click on the top of our cone here, you'll notice that its height has altered. It's no longer just moving back and forth along the axes. And then as I do this again, now it's jumped from being up here to being over here. So how do we control that? The document recommends using just two orientations, either getting there by simply tapping 7, 1, or 3. So any one of these orthographic views or view modes, any two of them would be sufficient to properly align or place your 3D cursor. So place it in one, then go to the other one, and then adjust it. But before we do that, I'm going to go over to my tools properties here, and because 3D cursor is selected, we have our 3D cursor options here. So you'll see that this toggle switch here says surface project. That's what causes it to be stuck to the surface of whatever I click on. So notice that when I click on my cube, that it didn't get centered. It's stuck to the surface of the cube. If I click on the cube here in this view and then rotate, you'll see that it's actually been placed right on the surface of that cube. Likewise, if I do the same thing to my cone here, that is where the 3D cursor has been set. If I get rid of that, then that is not what happens. Okay, so if I click here, okay, that's not because surface project is not working. That's because of my viewport and how the 3D cursor places itself accordingly. Okay, so but now that we have it like this, now we can take the 3D cursor and drag it into position. Let's say we want to get it back into the origin of our scene. So I'm going to place it here, but you'll notice that it's still off a little bit in these two. So now I'm going to come down to the second one and drag it up to where I want it to be. And now we are nice and centered. And if I come over here and rotate around, well, let's go back to here. Okay, if I rotate around this, you'll notice that it is actually in the center. It's not stuck to anything. Okay, now I'm going to pop open my sidebar by tapping N, bringing it over, and I'm going to jump down to Tool, which is right, whichever tool I'm currently using. And we're going to shift spacebar to bring our tool selection up, and tap spacebar again for our 3D cursor. And now you can see our active tool is a 3D cursor with surface project, right? Much of this is the same as what you see over here. So let's go through a few of these and figure some of the stuff out to see how we can use the 3D cursor for a couple of different things. Before we do that, actually, let's go down to View, and you'll notice if we go down here a little bit, we've got the 3D cursor location and rotation settings. So if we really wanted to be meticulous about where the cursor is, we could simply Shift select. Right, you remember how to do that? Hold Shift down while you're hovering over one of the text area bodies. Hold Shift down and then drag down across all of the all of your fields. And now whatever you enter will be entered into all of them. Hit enter, and now we are zeroed out. It is directly set at the origin of our entire three-dimensional landscape here. Now somehow we've rotated our 3D cursor 90 degrees across the x-axis, so I'm just going to bring that back to 0 degrees. And so our rotation controls are here, and here we can control the rotation mode of the 3D cursor. XYZ Euler is your default mode, and typically the mode you're going to most be using, at least. Quaternion is probably second most, depending really on what you're doing, but these two are, I guess, the most commonly used. Okay, now we're going to go back up to the Tool tab really quick and talk about a couple of these. So we've discussed Surface Project, so we know what that does. But orientation for the 3D cursor, so these options are, or at least these two, orientation and drag, are commonly shared across several different tools. But for 3D cursor, orientation is interesting because of how the 3D cursor is used. So let's just talk about a couple of these really quickly. So none basically doesn't affect the orientation of the 3D cursor. It just leaves it as it is, no matter what you do with it, other than rotating it. However, View aligns the 3D cursor's orientation to the viewport. Right. So however you are looking at the scene, the 3D cursor is going to be aligned accordingly. So, is going to be aligned to the view. Now, transform, the 3D cursor is going to be, its orientation is going to be set according to what's selected in our transform area here. So if you keep it global, then it's if this is set to transform, and this is set to global, the 3D cursor's orientation will be aligned with the scene's global orientation. Next is geometry, and this aligns with surface project kind of. So the geometry, however you set the 3D cursor on whatever object you're clicking on, the surface of whatever object, is going to align the 3D cursor's orientation to the normal of what you have placed it on, of the surface of the face or whatever. So that's that. And then lastly, snapping, or nope, not lastly. Okay, before we talk about snapping, let's talk about the pivot point. So the 3D cursor can be used as your pivot point, which can be extremely useful in a variety of different situations. Now for this, we're going to jump back out of quad view, Control Alt Q, and we're going to back up a little bit. Oops. Okay, now your 3D cursor can be used as your pivot point. So let's set the 3D cursor as the pivot point. And what this means is that it is the point around which any transformations you do to any object will be done around the 3D cursor. So let's grab the cube and move it over here a little bit. Now if I hit R to rotate the cube, you'll see that that the line from my cursor goes to my 3D cursor and uses it as the pivot point for my cube. So yeah, so that is that. You can also use your 3D cursor with snapping to snap it to different vertices, edges, faces, right? Volume, center of an edge, where two edges meet, and all the variety of different options that you have with each one, which can be extremely handy in several different situations. And one more option that it does not mention in the documentation, if you come over to your sidebar, drop down to View, I believe, and with View Lock, you have Lock to 3D Cursor. So with this, you can actually orbit around the 3D cursor. So wherever you set the 3D cursor, that is the point around which you will orbit. Alright, so just a quick kind of review. Your 3D cursor is the point at which anything spawns. Whenever you're placing something on your scene, that is where it will be placed. You can set it as the pivot point for anything. You can also set it to be the point around which you orbit, and you can use it with snapping. So it's got a variety of uses, and it's I think Blender is the only 3D rendering and design software that has the 3D cursor. I think it's unique to Blender. Alright, so that was the 3D cursor. I will see you guys next time when we talk about selecting. Again, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.